Alrighty everybody, what's going on today? I hope you're all doing well.
Well met.
Welcome to our WoW Classic Gear, Talents and Items video. This is a part 2, or rather an updated version of the original that I did way back in phase 1.5, which was right around the release of Dying Wall. So if you guys have seen that video and if you remember what it was like, you'll know that obviously a lot of my gear has since changed. For those of you who have not seen that video though, I'd recommend checking out that video in a link in the description to this one, just so you can, you know, sort of get a taste of what my gear was like back then compared to now. Also, it is advantageous to go and check that video out anyway, because I do talk about a few items in there that I'm not going to talk about today that could potentially help you out with AoE farming. So anyway, today's video, as I've just said, is more of an update really. To be fair, this is probably going to be I'm not going to say the last version, but it's basically the final thing, you know, how it sort of is going to be ever, okay? So I'm going to talk about my gear first. Now, the thing is, guys, the reason why I say this is basically it is because there's only really 2 items that I need to get that I would then consider myself to have the biz items for mass AoE pulling as a Holy Paladin in WoW Classic. That being the shoulders as well as the ring, okay? And that also reminds me, guys, if you are not a member of the Project Paladin Discord, link below in the description by the way, if you join up to that Discord group, there's actually an amazing community that we've managed to build over time. It's also very helpful for you guys that are looking for information with regards to this kind of way of playing a paladin really. I mean, we've actually got things like a useful tab which contains, you know, multiple links to different talents that I've created. It's also got a really handy PDF that you can download for free, which is basically what me and Russell have spent some time on, basically creating essentially what it says, a biz list for this kind of gameplay, what I deem to be the best pieces of armor as well as items and enchants for a Holy Paladin to mass AoE farm. So again, if you are looking to get something like that, you can absolutely do that. That's exclusively for those people who are joined onto that Discord server. Again, link below in the description to this video. So anyways, let's get right to it today, guys. So here we are, T2 Judgment Crown, okay? This, in my opinion, is the best helmet in the game for this. It's plate armor, it's got massive amounts of armor, it's got strength, it's got high stamina, it's got high intellect, very good. It's also got frost resistance, okay? Now, I won't really talk about resistances too much because they're not really essential, right? But for things like SM where they do cast frost spells, you know, it could come in handy. But again, it's not really essential. Now, the damage and healing with this is absolutely huge. Look at that, 32 damage and healing. Combining that with all of the stats that it gives, like, you really won't find anything else that beats it really in the game. So that's why I'm saying that's the best. And again, for the enchant, I've got 8 damage and healing, okay? That's not changed compared to the first video. Same for the necklace, Choker of the Fire Lord. Again, this is the best. Now, even for healing, as far as I'm aware, this is the best in the game. Even right through to Knack stuff. Because I mean, yeah, it's damage and healing, but it's got an extra 1 healing over this necklace, but it's also got stamina as well. So that's why it beats that, okay? You can clearly see it's better, even by like just a marginal upgrade, but especially for the AoE pull-in because it's got stamina over spirit, which, you know, it increases your HP, so it's decent in that sense. So yeah, not just for healing, but also for mass AoE pull-in, it's great for both of them. So this is another thing about the whole debate, oh, why do you get this as a Holy Paladin over someone like a mage, for example? Well, I've just explained it, you know, it does beat the blue one, so there we go. So I've still got my Lawbringer shoulders, that hasn't changed again. I haven't got them enchanted because, you know, like I say guys, I'm waiting to get either my T2 shoulders or the PvP shoulders. So my Saffron Drape, again, I believe this wasn't in the first one, so you get this from Onyxia. Again, it's got the same damage and healing I believe as the first one, which was the one from Blackrock Depths that I had. So it's the Sprite Caster Cape that I had originally. Okay, so it's got the same damage and healing, but it's got way more stamina, it's got way more intellect, it's also got more armor. So again, I mean, this is probably the best that you can get. I mean, there are some other ones that have a little bit more damage and healing, but you know, they lose out on intellect. So I mean, comparing to this one from Nefarian, I mean, it's got more damage and healing, but you know, the stamina is basically the same. And I can see, you know, I doubt you'd actually get this as a Holy Paladin. I'd say, you know, that is probably more like a mage or a warlock item. So again, you may struggle to get that, but obviously, you know, a good alternative is the Saffron Drape, which drops from Onyxia. So, you know, you can easily go down and get that, since we all know that Onyxia is really easy to do now. Demon Forge Breastplate. This again is the best in the game for this kind of thing. I mean, you might say, well, why have you got this over something like the T2 chest? Well, yeah, sure. I mean, it's got way better stats and more damage and healing. But if you look at the proc, equipped when struck in combat has a 3% chance of stealing 120 life from the attacker over 4 seconds. Now, unfortunately, I can't give you an exact math ratio of what the scaling is with spell power, but it does scale with spell power. So if you recall from some of my older videos, it used to heal like what, around 40 something per tick, whereas now with like more spell power, it does around 50 to 60 per tick, so it definitely, you know, increases it. But again, guys, this goes off quite often when you mass AoE pull in. I mean, a 3% chance when you've got so many mobs on you is quite a lot. So yeah, guys, this typically goes off between 1 to 4 times in any kind of large pull that I do. So you can imagine, you know, it's quite a lot of HP that heals you back over time. As for the enchant, I've got the 25 absorb. Again, that's really handy because, you know, whenever it goes off, say for instances, you know, such as stockades, it can reduce the damage by quite a lot. So it's really handy to get that over something like +4 on all stats. Okay, so moving on to the wrist now. As you can see, I've got the T2 wrist. Again, these are the best in the game for this kind of thing. Like, there's literally no other item that is like this, that is plate, that has so much stamina, but also has damage and healing. Again, I've opted in for the 9 stamina to increase my HP even further. I mean, if we take a look at it actually, so what's that? That's basically 30 stamina, okay? Let's see how much HP it reduces, because at the minute I've got, I'll take away my buffs, sorry. 4,241 HP, okay? So I'll remove this. And there we go, 3,941. So it's quite a lot of HP really in the grand scheme of things, you know, nice 300 HP there. So yeah, guys, that's really good in that sense. I mean, as for like, do any other wrists have spell power? As far as I'm aware, that a plate with, again, such high stamina, I don't really believe there is anything else out there, in Classic at least. Starting from our gloves, again, Judgment gloves. Again, guys, best in the game at the minute due to the highest damage and healing, plus with the whole, you know, stats and all that as well, you can't beat it. And again, guys, just for reference, if you look at the biz list that I created, you know, essentially that does compare all of this stuff, so you do know that, you know, this is probably the best that you can get. Again, I've got the 1% attack speed, which again, you'll see why I've got that in a second. Judgment belt, same again, guys. You know, whenever I talk about the judgment stuff, it's there for a reason, okay? It's got, you know, the highest damage and healing as well as the highest stats that you can possibly get. I mean, you know, there's only 2 items in a judgment set that aren't the best in the game, in my opinion. That's the legs and the shoulders. Moving on now to the legs. Same again, guys, you know, absolutely fantastic piece of gear to have. It's got 20 damage and healing. It's got a crap ton of stats on it, 26 stamina, 27 intellect. I've gone for the 8 damage and healing and enchant on that as well, just to increase my spell damage even further. Same for the boots, again, amazing stats on them. Now, the enchant that I've gone for these is the minor run speed increase, okay? Now, the reason behind that, if you guys remember back in the old WoW Hobbs videos, he used to say, you know, he had that just to help him keep himself a little bit further ahead of those mobs, you know, just to sort of reduce the overall damage that he takes really, which does come in handy to be fair. Now the ring I've gone for is the heavy dark iron ring. I mean, if you guys remember from like, you know, months back, I used to talk about this and how it was so good. It gives you a huge amount of stamina. As far as I'm aware, even compared to Nax rings, it's pretty good for a tank, you know. 20 stamina is, you know, it's a really high stat to have. So yeah, that explains that over something like spell damage. Again, now that we're talking about rings, I will go on to explain, different alternatives that you can have. Let's just take a look at my other one that I'm using for now, okay? So the other ring that I've got is Nagel ring. This is from Blackrock Depths. As you can see, it's sort of like a downgraded version of the heavy dark iron ring, really, with the 50 armor compared to the 110 armor, and 20 stamina compared to the 10 stamina. Same for the defense as well. They both got defense on them. Now the only difference is Nagel ring actually deals 3 arcane damage to the attacker whenever they hit you, which it's a nice, little thing to have, really. I mean, if you compare it with the gloves that you can get from Diamond jump runs, I believe it is, from the last boss, Owls in the Wild Shaper, they also do the same thing. And if you remember from my Gnomerigon video, they do actually stack, which is kind of handy. But again, that's not really going to the Holy Paladin route that we're going. I mean, that links into more of the reflect builds that you can do, such as Blessing the Sanctuary and Improved Retribution Aura, for example. But like I say, guys, that's not really the route that we're going. We're full Holy, okay? We've got Holy Shock. So for both of these, now, I would like to switch them out for spell damage rings, or at least one of them, okay? So, usually, mainly for PvP, I'll swap it for this ring here. So I'll swap Nagel ring with Songstone of Ironforge. Now, with that, I lose a bit of HP, but I gain 18 damage and healing. So, ideally, guys, I would like to replace it with this one, Band of Servitude. Now, this is from ZG. And obviously, if you look at it, compared to the Songstone of Ironforge, firstly, it's got, 8 more stamina, which comparing it to Nagel ring, it's only 2 less stamina. It's not really a big deal. Now, it's also got intellect, which again is good. It's nice and handy for those consecrations and, being able to survive and stuff. And it's also got way more damage and healing. Okay, so ideally, I would like both heavy dark iron ring as well as this ring. And again, that gives you the best of both worlds. You've got high stamina, high intellect, as well as high damage and healing. So yeah, that's my theory behind that. Now again, guys, for mass AoE pulling as a Holy Paladin, by far the best 2 trinkets to have is the Force of Will, as well as Uther's Strength. Now, yeah, this trinket wasn't in the first video as far as I recall. So basically what it does is, if you can see it, it's when struck in combat has a 1% chance of reducing all melee damage taken by up to 25 for 10 seconds. And it also increases your defense by 7, but we don't really need to look at that. So the proc that it does when struck in combat is absolutely amazing. Essentially, it's like having an extra Blessing the Sanctuary with you. Obviously that's only rank 1, but maxed out is 25 as well. So that way, it helps increase your overall survivability. And as you can imagine, 1% might not seem like a lot, but when you've got so many mobs on you all hitting you at the same time, it does go off quite often, especially in those larger pools in places like SM, for example. It definitely goes off. Now, it also goes off at the same time as Uther's Strength. They don't interrupt each other, which is great. Which again, when equipped, has a 2% chance of, when stuck in combat, of protecting you with a Holy Shield. Now, unfortunately, I can't give you an exact amount of damage that it does absorb, but I can say for certain that this also goes off really often. Now, the way it works is, it's sort of like a hybrid between a Priest bubble and a Paladin bubble, in the sense that with the Paladin bubble, which is, Divine Shield, you can essentially cast any spell that you want whilst it's going off and not be interrupted. Whereas the reason why it's similar to a Priest bubble is because it only absorbs a finite amount of damage. Whereas obviously with Divine Shield, it just goes on until the timer ends. Okay, so that's why it's kind of like a hybrid. Both of these combined in massive AoE pools, there's just nothing better out there in Classic that you can have. Now again, occasionally in things like PvP, or for those smaller pools that I do, I'll have something like Ramstein's Lightning Bolts, which again, when you use it, it inflicts 200 to 300 nature damage to all enemies around you, which is absolutely amazing. Now, also another great option is the Essence of Pure Flame. Now, this is probably for those more easier farms, such as the Dire Mortal Slasher route. You've got a small amount of mobs on you that aren't really too difficult to take down by yourself, and you're looking for a little bit more DPS. Now remember, everything in Classic is situational, hence why I've got different items. Also, that's great for PvP, might add. So yeah, guys, that's basically the gear. Let's look at the weapons now. So for the Flurry Axe, as I've explained before, speed rating of 1.50, which in and itself is amazing, and you'll see why in a second. I've opted in for the 30 spell damage on this, which in my opinion is better than life stealing or Crusader, simply because when you take into account spell power, it helps increase this, the Demon Forge breastplate, along with the Skull Flame shield, which we'll get to in a second. But also for the proc of it, chance on hit grants 1 extra attack on your next melee swing. So essentially, whenever it goes off, you do an extra melee attack. Now, taking into account, this will go off quite often just because of the speed. Because you're hitting so fast, obviously, you know, the more you do something, the more chance you've got of it going off. Now, apparently it's around a 4 or 5% proc rate, so it's not that bad. If you do have a slightly high defense, you know, with things like this, or this, for example, obviously you do have a more chance to parry, which again, when you do parry, it takes a certain percentage off your total weapon swing timer for the next one. So again, that's even faster weapon swings. Now the reason why it's so good is because when you take into account Seal of Light and Judgment of Light, I forget which way around it is, but one of them does like 64, another one does, I think it's like 94 or something like that. Essentially it's around 150 HP when they both go off. This doesn't scale with spell power, but again, like I say, around 150 HP when they both go off. So you can imagine, if you do a weapon swing and it procs, then that's, you know, even more healing from Seal of Light. And then take into account things like this, as well as Skull Flame. Let's say they both go off. Let's say this goes off like 2 times. So that's in 1 second, that's about 100 HP. This goes off, which is about another 330 odd HP. Plus this, so what's that? That's about 700 HP nearly in the space of a split second. Considering that we've only got 4k HP on both, that's quite a lot. So that's the theory behind that over something like Lockhamir with the high spell damage, or, you know, Hand of Edward the Odd. That's the only reason. And as you've seen in all of my videos, it does turn out pretty good. You know, it helps me keep myself alive with the whole Seal of Light thing going off. Everything's entirely situational. It's entirely your choice. Because if you guys remember, back during the original video that I did have Qual Sera. Now, the only reason why I had this over anything else is because, one, I hadn't realised how good this was at, you know, that point in time. But also, because my gear was pretty bad, I did need more stats than anything. Hence the reason why I went for this, for 12 stamina. Plus, you know, the chance on hit is pretty decent anyway. But also, come on guys, let's face it. Coolest weapon in the game, right? Enough about that. So yeah guys, going off to the shield now, Skull Flame shield. It doesn't really give you any stats, which is fine. We're not looking for that with this. We're just looking for the procs that it does. So as we can see, when struck in combat, has a 3% chance of stealing 35 life from the enemy target. Now, what this does is essentially, apparently, from what I've been told, it's a 1-to-1 ratio with how it scales. As it stands at the minute, mine heals for around 300 to 330 HP. If you've watched my videos, my live streams, or my gold farming guides, you'll know that it really does go off quite often, at least twice per fight. As I mentioned in the Shadowfang Keep video where I tried to do it in one pull, it went off like 3 times in the space of a couple of seconds, which if you add it all together, that's nearly 1000 HP. It's really powerful. But also, as I explained to that as well, you know, I was doing stockades and it literally went off 4 times, you know, straight after each other, so yeah. Also, with the when struck in combat, it has a 1% chance of dealing 75 to 125 fire damage to all targets around you, which again, increasing your overall damage to all of the mobs, you just really can't beat it. With it scaling with spell power, it will take you all the way into, you know, end game stuff in TBC. With all of that level 70 spell power, it's going to increase that, so, you know, it's just amazing for that. Now let's look at my talents. Now, for those of you guys who are on Project Paladin Discord group, you'll know that I do have an improved version of this exact spec. So this spec has not changed since I dinged level 60, right? Now the reason behind that is not because it's the best one out there, because like I say, I do have an improved version of this which is even better for AoE pulling as a Holy Paladin. The reason why I've gone for this and stayed with this is purely to show you guys, like, look, if I can do it like this as Holy spec in the worser talent build, then, you know, there's nothing to say that you guys can't do it. You know, I'm literally just the average Joe player, right? So if I can do it, then surely you can do it, okay? With the improved version, that is. So that's basically the reason why I've not gone to the improved version. Plus, you know, the improved version is switching a few things around, such as these two. You know, I don't have that, I've got that instead in it. Which, as you can see, you know, when combined with this, Consecration Aura, you basically can cast any kind of heal without, you know, having to be interrupted. So that provides tremendous benefit. I do PvP quite a lot, trying to get to, you know, rank 13, but it's not really happening, is it? Let's face it. I've gone with this. I've got 5 out of 5 Divine Intellect, 5 out of 5 Improved Seal of Righteousness. Again, that's more for single target damage, hence why I say I prefer to PvP a little bit. I've also gone for 1 out of 2 in Improved Lay on Hands. Again, that's just to have, you know, somewhere to put the points to go down into the next thing. Okay, got Consecration, that is a must. I've gone for Healing Light again, so if I need to, I can essentially raid heal as well, which is really good. And it's also good for healing yourself if you need to top yourself up. So I've gone for Illumination, which is great, because obviously it's a fantastic way of saving mana whenever your spells do crit. Again, gone down to Divine Favor, which is absolutely amazing, especially when you precast it before you start your runs and you do a Holy Potion. It's essentially like a free heal right there with it. Holy Shock, best ability in the game in my opinion. I'll talk about the macro in a second, although that again is on the Project Paladin Discord group under the useful things tab. So if you need to copy and paste that, that's up there waiting for you. I've gone for Improved Blessing of Wisdom. This is more just to keep my mana up as much as possible, really. That's the reason behind it. Plus again, you know, I kind of needed the points in there. Lasting Judgment, this is really good for saving mana in terms of not having to judge every time. So yeah, that's the reason why that is. And again, Holy Power, 5% extra Holy Crit, really good. So going into the protection tree now, as standard, 5 out of 5 in Redoubt, don't really need to discuss that. And then I followed it up with a 3 out of 3 in Shield Specialization. Helps increase your overall survivability. Now to be fair, I could change those and put them in there or there, preferably in the Anticipation tree, just because defense skill obviously increases your chance to parry and stuff, which again, the more that you parry, obviously, the faster that you can do a weapon swing, which again is good for Seal of Light hits. So yeah, that could essentially, you know, increase your overall survivability in that sense. But again, it all depends on you and what you're doing, because obviously this helps for those higher level mobs that you're grinding, such as Diamond jump runs. Sorry, Lasher Farm. That's that. And again, 7 points in Retribution. So I've gone for this, which again saves mana, which increases your overall survivability. Don't really need to explain that too much. This is more of a PvP thing, you know, with Judgment of Righteousness, which does hit quite hard in PvP. I mean, looking at my spell power, when I've got all of this up, you know, it's ideally, you know, I could change that and stuff and have a higher spell power weapon. But, you know, even with my spell power, which is 328, you know, when this crits, Judgment of Righteousness, you know, it crits for around 600 damage, which is freaking huge, to be honest, in PvP. But again, guys, like I say, if you was purely doing AoE farming, there are, you know, a few different things that I would have, especially with regards to the whole improved version of this that I have. So again, there is that basically, guys. Okay, and yeah, that's basically it, everybody. You know, that's, you know, all of the items that I have at the minute that I also deem most of them to be the best in the game in terms of AoE pulling as the Holy Paladin. Hopefully, you know, this has cleared a few things up for you guys if you had any questions. You know, it's also giving you guys an update really on, you know, what's been going on. So yeah, I suppose now I can link this rather than the original version, since we know that that one is way overdated. So yeah, it's definitely long overdue. But yeah, guys, if you do have any questions that you'd like to ask, feel free to post in the comment section down below. I'm always happy to respond to you guys. You know, if there's anything that you need help with, just let me know, and I'll, like I say, I'll respond to that as soon as I can. Guys, this is WoW Classic Talents and Gears as a Holy Paladin. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's video. Hopefully it's been informative. But until the next time, everybody, see ya.